It is no secret that Avatar: The Last Airbender delivered what is considered by many to be one of the best redemption arcs in modern media. So I decided to watch the series through and find out just what was so special about it. And from my research, I discovered a simple 7-step formula that anyone can use to write their own. So in this video, we're going to break down what I learned, take a look at what these steps are, and reveal how you can use them to create a redemption arc so enjoyable your audience will remember it for years to come. But there is one thing we need to make clear before you start using the formula, because you can use all 7 of the steps, but if you don't know this one thing first, it will all fall apart. So before you understand how to write a great redemption arc, you need to know why some of them just do not work. And the best way to explain this is through the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Unlike Zuko, whose story had us tearing up with joy when he finally joins Team Avatar, Kylo Ren had us shuddering with rage as his pivot seemed so forced, pardon the pun. But if writers understand exactly why this is, it will help them to prevent making the same mistake. You see, there's a reason why Kylo Ren's arc fell flat and Zuko's managed to soar. And by getting a grasp of the difference between the two, we can start to spot how easy it is to make the same mistake when writing our own stories. One of the greatest things writers get wrong when doing a redemption arc is something which will destroy any chance of making it work before the audience even get to know the character. By the time Kylo Ren changes his mind and decides to become Ben Solo, we've not only seen him do several abhorrent things like leading the First Order and killing his own father, we've actually never seen him do anything remotely good. And this is exactly what makes a terrible redemption arc. In building a character who seems so irredeemable, it becomes very difficult for an audience to accept that they could be redeemed at all. But it's also essential that the character starts off the story as being seemingly bad. So how does Avatar manage to do this in a way that allows room for Zuko to grow? There's a common misconception about an important element of storytelling, and it comes from our childhood teachings. When we are first trying to learn about the world, everything is binary and categorized as either good or bad. This is the same for our characters. When I was a kid, I used to love watching Adam West's Batman. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but I did know that Batman was the goodie and the rogues gallery were the baddies. Things seem so clear-cut that it's very easy for new writers to mistake the meaning of what an antagonist is. Granted, there are plenty of characters out there who are pure evil, and it's always fun to watch the hero grapple with them. But an antagonist doesn't have to be evil to play that role in the story. There is only one thing they need to do for things to work. In fact, I would argue that antagonists are always more powerful when they do this without being evil at all. When this is employed, they become well-rounded characters and sometimes very difficult not to root for. Avatar started the show doing this exact thing with Zuko, and they made it so simple for us to understand that our first instinct was that Zuko was bad news for Aang, and as an extension, bad news full stop. So what is this all-important thing? Before the story even begins, the audience are made aware of the fact that the Fire Nation is evil, and so when we meet their prince, Zuko, we already have a clue that he is gonna be the bad guy. But it isn't his background which makes him the antagonist of the series. What does this is the fact that he has an objective to capture the Avatar. This is something which directly opposes Aang's ultimate goal to save the world. By positioning Zuko as the main character's enemy, our first impression of him is that he is a bad person, and his actions all but confirm this. So the first step is giving the character you want to redeem an opposing goal to the protagonist, making them an antagonist, but not necessarily evil. The next thing the writers of Avatar did managed to give the audience enough of a clue that there was something about Zuko that could be redeemed. And this was so powerful that on a rewatch you can already see where this is going to go. Which is why the second step is crucial if you ever hope for your character to see the error of their ways. In the first series of Avatar, Zuko takes on what seems to be the role of the main villain. Most of his time is taken up with his goal of catching Aang, and from the way that he acts, he will stop at nothing to achieve it. But even from the initial scene that he appears in, there is one constant clue that he is destined for greater things. At first glance, it might seem like a harmless addition of comedy into what is inherently a children's TV show. Upon further analysis, it is quite clear what the writers were trying to do, and it is through the use of this step that they helped to keep Zuko grounded. Even when he was making terrible decisions, which sometimes cause great distress to others. By including this in their story, the audience always had a reason to be drawn to Zuko, and from the very beginning it remains to be his most redeeming quality. And without it, there is no way the show itself would have been able to convince us that Zuko would make such a significant change. But what is this all-important thing? Step 2 is to include a mentor from the off, and there is a specific way the show sets this up, which made this step even more powerful. In Avatar, the one thing which keeps us connected to Zuko from the start is his comical relationship with his wise, tea-loving Uncle Iroh. Not only is Iroh an extremely endearing character, he also manages to bring the best out in his nephew. He's always there to offer an alternative perspective, which causes Zuko to frequently question his actions and learn from his mistakes. And there's one moment that the writers included which instantly gave us a hint that Iroh was more than just your average member of the Fire Nation. While the show pits them up as the evil ones, Iroh secretly celebrates the moment the Avatar escapes for the first time, revealing that he is not in support of the plight of both Zuko and the Fire Nation, and making it clear that he will become someone quite significant in Zuko's journey. Once it had been established as to who Zuko was and what his relationship with his uncle was, the third step was designed to really get the ball rolling on his transformation. Without this step, the audience wouldn't understand the journey we're about to go on, and as a result, the change would fall flat, which is why it is essential to getting the whole formula right. It wasn't until the 30th episode of the show that this step was employed. But before I tell you how you can do it well, I want to explain how easy it is to get wrong. You see, while the Star Wars sequel trilogy sort of included something like it, they didn't quite manage to use it in the best possible way. So what is step 3, and how can it go so horribly wrong? Once they had given the audience enough time to digest Zuko's role in the story and his relationship with his uncle, the writers finally revealed his true motivation for capturing the Avatar. In Star Wars The Force Awakens, we see Kylo Ren talking to the helmet of Darth Vader, making it quite clear that he wanted to finish what he started. But while this makes it clear what his goal is, it doesn't explain why he wants to do this. The Last Jedi then reveals the truth when Luke Skywalker explains that he tried to kill Kylo Ren because he sensed a darkness in him. This makes some sense of why Kylo was so motivated to fight against him, but the reason doesn't seem coherent enough. For step 3 to work, there's a special source that Avatar managed to perfect in their own version of this. In the episode called The Storm, Uncle Iroh tells a group of Fire Nation warriors the reason why Zuko hunts the Avatar. Through a flashback, we learn that Zuko wants nothing more than to regain his honor, an honor he supposedly lost when he protested against his father for using their troops in a way which would waste lives. Unlike Kylo Ren, who didn't make any active choices that led to Luke's attack, Zuko tries to do something inherently good and wrongly learns a lesson from his father, the evil Fire Lord, that his kind heart is weak. With this newly framed understanding of why Zuko does what he does, it makes the audience empathize with him in such a way that they become open to his potential for change. But there's an extra thing they did which strengthened our bond to Zuko even more. While Kylo Ren has done nothing but evil deeds since we first saw him, Zuko makes a decision in the same episode to let the Avatar escape so he won't risk the lives of his crew. This acts as a subtle hint that Zuko is capable of change and makes it much easier to accept that he may eventually switch sides. It was then followed up by the next step in episode 14, The Blue Spirit, which included something so clever that it was used to track one of the most significant moments in Zuko's transformation. Now that the audience has been made aware of the reason that Zuko does what he does, the next step marks the true beginnings of Zuko's change and also goes on to become a huge part of his journey in the second series. So what is the fourth step? And why does it make the writers of Avatar look so clever? In the episode in question, Aang's been taken captive by Commander Zhao, who intends to deliver him to the Fire Lord and get the honor that Zuko desires. Everything seems to be going well for Zhao until a mysterious swordsman, a legend known as the Blue Spirit, comes to the Avatar's rescue. However, once they have escaped, it is revealed that the person behind the mask is in fact Zuko. Curiously, he chooses to let Aang go, no doubt wanting to earn his honor fair and square. But this isn't the last time we see the Blue Spirit. because when Zuko and his uncle become homeless, he starts to use it to help others, along with collecting supplies from their enemies. The blue spirit becomes a symbol of Zuko's joint identity, the anger and hatred he wears on the outside, which masks the softness and light which he has within him. In the final outing of the blue spirit, we see Uncle Iroh convince Zuko to free Appa, the Avatar's sky bison. In making this choice, he also throws the mask of the blue spirit away. This symbolizes Zuko letting go of his inner struggle as he embraces the person he is about to become. While Kylo Ren becomes Ben Solo once again at the end of the trilogy, we never have an example of this inner conflict shown to us, whereas we see Zuko grapple with this change. So step 4 is introducing a symbol of the character's inner struggle, which they can then reject towards the end of the story. But the writers knew they needed to implement something in between Zuko's journey from the first Blue Spirit episode to the last, because without it, the change would feel out of character. In order for the audience to feel like they've gone on a journey, they needed to see the beginning, middle, and end. And the hardest thing for any storyteller to get right is the middle, because it seems like such a long trek. But the creators of Avatar knew exactly what they needed to put in the middle of Zuko's story if he was going to make a full transition. This is where Star Wars really got things wrong. By skipping this step completely, they made Kylo Ren's redemption seem to come out of nowhere. They spent so much time establishing him as a villain, they forgot to fully explore the depths of the character. Without this step, your character will never reach their full potential. The writers of Avatar knew that if this approach was going to work, they needed to understand one thing from the get-go. It's something which every character should start a story with, because it's actually the thing which makes them the most compelling, and once it's chosen, it will dictate the way the story must go if you want to make it satisfying. So what is it? Well, we've already established in step 1 that Zuko's goal is to catch the Avatar, and thanks to step 3, we know that his motivation for doing this is to reclaim his honor. But that's where the problem is, because Zuko believes that he must fulfill his destiny by capturing the Avatar in order to reclaim his honor and do his part for the Fire Nation. The writers knew that this was a lie, and they also knew it was something that he was going to have to learn the truth about by the end of the story. So step 5 is educating your character and breaking down their lie bit by bit. But how did the creators of Avatar do this? Well, they break it down into 2 smaller lies. 1. Zuko believes he must capture the Avatar to complete his destiny. 2. He believes that the Fire Nation are doing what is best for the rest of the world. At the end of the first season, Zuko manages to capture the Avatar, but things take a turn for the worse because he has no idea what to do next. He's spent the entire show trying to achieve this act, but when he finally does it, he learns that his so-called destiny means nothing. In Season 2, the writers force Zuko to confront the truth about the Fire Nation when he is allowed to see the poor conditions everyone else is living in. He discovers something he will later tell his father, that the people don't benefit from it, and in fact, they live in fear of them. They conclude all of this with the important choice we spoke about earlier in the video, but the next step is what makes Zuko's story stand out the most. By the time we get to the end of the second season, it seems quite clear that Zuko has changed. He has learned the truth about what he once believed, and made some important decisions which define him as a person. But there's something the writers did which took Zuko's story from being a run-of-the-mill redemption arc and made it a great contender for being the best. When Zuko did this, it made everything feel so much more real. It was paramount that this happened for the final peg of his journey to commence, and it's something that the Star Wars sequels technically did, but their execution wasn't done very well at all. So what is step 6? In the second season finale, Zuko has gone through what Uncle Iroh calls metamorphism. He has all but turned his back on what he believed to be his destiny, and we've even seen him have a moment of connection with Katara. But things change when an opportunity strikes. Zuko finally has the means to capture the Avatar. He is left with a choice which will define his future. Does he help the Avatar escape, like his recent teachings would hint to, or attempt to capture him and finally get the honor he has been craving? In the Star Wars sequel trilogy, Kylo Ren is also given a choice when he is told to kill Rey by his master Snoke. What seems to be a choice between good and evil quickly evolves into Ren seemingly choosing to be good. And with a similar choice, Zuko seemingly chooses to be evil. So what makes Zuko's decision all the more compelling, and why does this step work so much better in Avatar than Star Wars? Step 6 is giving your character what they wanted at the beginning of the journey. They must be offered a difficult decision which is based on choosing between what they want and what they need. For this to work, they must choose what they want. For example, Zuko might need to abandon all of his father's teachings, but deep down he still wants a taste of that honor. So of course he decides to try and capture the Avatar. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren chooses to betray his master and ask Rey to join him in ruling the galaxy. The weight of this decision doesn't feel as heavy because Kylo's motivations are quite unclear. Nobody truly knows why he thinks that teaming up with Rey is a good idea. While Zuko chooses the thing he has been craving for the entire show, Kylo Ren chooses to side with someone that, up until that film, he hasn't really shown much interest in. Therefore, Zuko's choice commands the most power. This is the most crucial step of the journey, and the one which sticks out the most. For your character to make a full transition, they need to make their greatest mistake. But how does this make it a redemption arc? Surely they need to, redeem themselves? That's because there's one last thing you need to do in order to stick the landing. It is often said that people usually remember the beginning and the end of the story the most, which is why this final step must be treated carefully in order to get things right. Avatar: The Last Airbender is split into 3 seasons, and it is at the beginning of the final third of the story that we pick up the most important part of Zuko's arc. The first one revealed Zuko's past and his inner conflict. The second had him seemingly change only to revert at the end, which meant that the third needed to finally give the audience the transition they've been waiting for. Before Step 7 could be implemented, they needed to put Zuko through his final set of teachings. They knew they had to take the majority of the final season to lead up to this, because if they were to go back too quickly, it would ruin everything that they had set up. In the Star Wars sequels, Kylo Ren remains evil throughout. He continues to make terrible decisions and never once does anything remotely redeemable. On top of this, the lie he believes is never truly questioned. So how he goes from a person who wants to rule the galaxy into a person who helps to save it is very hard to connect with. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, we see Zuko has finally got the thing he wants. But the twist is that he still isn't happy. Instead of seeming like the character has regressed to the start, it actually becomes more apparent that he has changed. Whereas the Zuko at the start of Season 1 would have felt rewarded by gaining his father's trust, the Zuko has been through the experiences he has over the last 2 series is underwhelmed and can see nothing but evil in the nation he once thought was a savior. He continues to be paranoid that he isn't good enough because he knows his father's acceptance could disappear as quickly as it came. The 3rd series gives Zuko time to compare what he expected to happen with the reality of what actually does. This becomes clear in a key episode where he's sent on holiday with his sister. He opens up about how angry and hurt he is. But there's still more learning left for him to do, because everything changes the day that Zuko learns the truth about his heritage and the friendship his great-grandfather had with a previous avatar. On the day of the Black Sun, Zuko confronts his father and reveals he will be joining Team Avatar. Step 7 is to build up to one final choice the character must make. But there's something the writers did to sweeten the deal. You see, as humans, we've been born with a negativity bias. Our survival instinct often leads us to expect bad things to happen in order to prevent them catching us off guard. In the same way, a negative act will have more impact on us than a positive one, which means writers must go the extra mile to help solidify the change within their characters. After Zuko makes his hardest decision, to turn his back on everything he wants to do to help the Avatar, his destiny shifts. By the end of the story, Zuko is put through the ultimate test as to whether he has changed when facing his sister. When she spots she is losing, she tries to kill Katara, but Zuko jumps between them. By putting his life ahead of one of the people who would once have been his enemy, Zuko's full transformation comes to a head. So it's important for the character to make one final decision which acts as the ultimate display of their change. But there's one bonus thing the writers of Avatar knew they would have to do, or else they would risk ruining the story completely. Believe it or not, it's the one thing that the creators of the Star Wars sequels failed to do. You see, it's all good and well to understand the 7 steps, but there is one crucial mistake that the creators of the Star Wars sequels made, and it's the reason why their story fell apart, and it's something that so many writers get wrong, so don't forget to check out this next video where I reveal what it is and what you can do to avoid it.